The frost on the window told Olivia Brennan that Christmas in Challis, Idaho Territory, would be white that year. But the chill in her heart had nothing to do with the December weather and everything to do with the empty chair beside her bed where her father should have been sitting, reading his evening newspaper. 3 months had passed since consumption took Samuel Brennan from this world, leaving his 22-year-old daughter alone in a town where she knew almost nobody, with barely enough money to keep the small boarding house running through winter. The boarding house had been her father's dream after they moved from Boston 2 years ago, seeking the dry mountain air that doctors promised would cure his illness. It had not worked, and now Olivia found herself managing 6 rooms, cooking meals for transient miners and cowboys, and wondering how long she could maintain the property before the bank came calling. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching the main street of Challis fill with evening foot traffic. Men in heavy coats moved between the saloons and general stores, their breath forming clouds in the bitter air. Women in thick shawls hurried toward homes where warm fires and families waited. Olivia had neither family nor the promise of warmth beyond what she could afford in coal for the stove. The knock on her door pulled her from the window. She smoothed her simple gray dress and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear before answering. Mrs. Whitmore from the dress shop stood in the hallway, her round face pink from the cold. "Miss Brennan, I hope I am not disturbing you. I wanted to remind you about the Christmas dance this Saturday evening. The whole town will be there and we would love to see you attend." Olivia managed a small smile. "Thank you for thinking of me, but I am not sure I would be appropriate company. I am still in mourning." Mrs. Whitmore reached out and patted Olivia's hand. "Your father has been gone 3 months, dear. I knew Samuel well, and he would not want you hiding away in this boarding house through the holidays. It is just one evening of music and community. You do not have to dance if you feel it is improper, but please come and have some hot cider and cake. The church social hall will be decorated beautifully." After Mrs. Whitmore left, Olivia considered the invitation. Her father would have encouraged her to go. He had always worried about her isolation, especially after her mother died when Olivia was just 15. The 7 years since had been spent caring for her father, managing their household in Boston, and then making the long journey west. She had never attended a dance, never had a beau, never experienced the simple joys that other young women seem to take for granted. Saturday evening arrived with snow falling in thick flakes that transformed Challis into something from a fairy story. Olivia wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that her mother had helped her sew years ago. It was not fashionable by current standards, but it was clean and well maintained. She wrapped herself in her warmest cloak and walked the 3 blocks to the church social hall, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. The building glowed with lamplight, and she could hear fiddle music even from outside. When she pushed through the door, warmth and noise engulfed her. The hall had been decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons. Tables along one wall held food and drinks. At least 50 people filled the space, and couples spun across the floor in a lively reel. Olivia recognized some faces from around town but knew few names. She moved to the refreshment table and accepted a cup of hot cider from a smiling woman she did not know. Finding a seat against the wall, she settled in to watch the festivities. The dancing continued for an hour. Olivia observed the patterns, the way partners moved together, the joy on their faces. Mrs. Whitmore had been right about the decorations. The hall looked magical with its Christmas greenery and candlelight. Despite her mourning, Olivia felt something lighten in her chest. Then she noticed him. He stood in the far corner, separate from the crowd, his back partially to her. He was tall, with broad shoulders under a clean brown shirt and black vest. His dark hair was neatly combed and he held his hat in his hands, but what caught her attention was his stillness. While everyone else moved and talked and laughed, he stood like a statue, watching the dancers with an expression she could not read from across the room. When he turned slightly, she saw the left side of his face. 3 long scars ran from his temple down to his jaw, pale lines against sun-weathered skin. The scars looked old but prominent. They gave his face a fierce appearance that made her look away quickly, then feel ashamed for her reaction. The music ended and couples separated to applaud the musicians. A new tune started, slower this time. A waltz. Partners reformed on the floor, and Olivia watched with a mixture of longing and resignation. She had never learned to waltz. Her father had tried to teach her once in their Boston parlor, but he had been too weak, and they had ended up laughing at their clumsy attempts instead. "Excuse me, miss." The voice came from her left. She turned to find a young man in a fine suit standing before her. He had slicked back blonde hair and a confident smile. "I am Thomas Kelly. My father owns the bank here in town. I do not believe we have been introduced." Olivia set down her cider cup. "Olivia Brennan. I run the boarding house on 3rd Street. Ah, yes, I have heard of you. My condolences on your father's passing. Would you care to dance, Miss Brennan?" Something in his tone made her uncomfortable, though she could not identify what exactly. Perhaps it was the way his eyes assessed her, or the slight curl of his lips that suggested amusement rather than genuine interest. Nevertheless, she was about to accept out of politeness when movement caught her eye. The scarred man had moved closer. He was watching their interaction with an intensity that made her breath catch. When their eyes met across the distance, he looked away immediately. "Miss Brennan," Thomas Kelly prompted. "The dance." "I am sorry, Mr. Kelly, but I am not dancing this evening. I am still in mourning for my father." His smile dimmed. "Of course, perhaps another time." He walked away without further courtesy, and Olivia felt relief wash over her. The evening continued. She drank another cup of cider and ate a slice of cake that one of the church ladies pressed into her hands. She made small talk with several women and accepted their condolences on her father's death. All the while, she was aware of the scarred man in the corner. He had not moved, had not spoken to anyone that she could see, had not approached the refreshment table or joined any conversations. The waltz ended and another began. More couples took the floor. Olivia found herself counting the women along the walls. There were 7, including herself. 6 were older married women taking a rest from dancing. She was the only one of marriageable age sitting alone. She was debating whether to leave early when a shadow fell across her lap. She looked up to find the scarred man standing before her. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a striking light blue, almost gray. The scars looked like they had come from claws. Animal, perhaps. The marks were long healed but must have been terrible when fresh. "Miss." His voice was deep and rough, as if he did not use it often. "Would you care to dance?" Her heart hammered. Every eye in the room seemed to turn toward them, though that was likely her imagination. She could feel the weight of the moment, the choice before her. "I am in mourning," she heard herself say. "It would not be appropriate." Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, or understanding. He nodded once, a sharp dip of his chin, and turned away. Olivia watched him walk back to his corner and immediately regretted her words. He had gathered his courage to ask her, a stranger with a scarred face who clearly was not comfortable in social settings, and she had refused him with the same excuse she had given Thomas Kelly. But Thomas Kelly had not needed her kindness. This man, whoever he was, had. The music continued. Olivia tried to enjoy herself, but her gaze kept returning to the corner where the scarred man stood. His expression had not changed, but his shoulders seemed more hunched, his isolation more pronounced. Another waltz began. The room spun with color and movement. Olivia made a decision. She stood, smoothed her skirts, and walked across the hall. Her heart pounded with each step. When she reached the corner, the man looked up in surprise. "I apologize," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I was rude earlier. The truth is, I have never learned to waltz properly. I would be a terrible partner, but if you would be willing to risk your toes, I would very much like to try." His eyes widened. For a moment he simply stared at her, and she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Then slowly, almost disbelieving, he held out his hand. "I am not much of a dancer myself, miss, but I would be honored." His hand was calloused and warm as she placed hers in it. He led her to the floor with surprising grace, positioning himself carefully so that the right side of his face was toward her, the scarred side partially hidden. She noticed and deliberately stepped to shift their position so she could see him fully. "I am Olivia Brennan," she said as he placed his other hand respectfully on her waist. "Vincent Bardwell," he replied. "Most people call me Vince." The music swelled and they began to move. He was right about not being much of a dancer. His steps were careful and deliberate, lacking the fluid confidence of other couples around them. But his hold was steady, and he guided her with gentle pressure that helped her anticipate his movements. "How did you learn to waltz?" she asked, trying to ease the tension she felt in his frame. "My mother insisted before she passed, said every man should know how to dance, regardless of his station in life. I have not practiced much since then." "When did she pass?" 10 years ago. I was 18. That made him around 28, she calculated, 6 years older than herself. "I am sorry," she said. "I lost my mother when I was 15. My father just 3 months ago. I heard about Samuel Brennan. He seemed like a good man from what I saw of him. You knew my father, not well. But I saw him around town. He always had a kind word for everyone, even for men like me." Olivia frowned. "What do you mean, men like you?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "I work at the Three Rivers Ranch, miss. I am just a cowboy, and I have a face that makes people uncomfortable." "Your scars do not make me uncomfortable, Mr. Bardwell." He met her eyes then, searching her face as if looking for dishonesty. "You are kind to say so." "I am not being kind. I am being truthful. How did you get them, if you do not mind my asking?" They turned in time with the music. Around them, other couples spun and swayed, but Olivia barely noticed them. All her attention was focused on the man holding her, on the surprising gentleness in his rough hands, on the guarded hope in his eyes. "Mountain lion," he said finally. 5 years ago. I was checking fence lines in the high country, and I came around a boulder face to face with a mother and her cubs. She did not take kindly to the surprise. I survived, but my face did not fare so well. That must have been terrifying. It was, but I learned to be more careful after that. He paused. "Most people do not ask, they just stare or look away." "People can be thoughtless," Olivia said. "But scars just mean you survived something difficult. They are nothing to be ashamed of." The waltz ended and they stopped moving, but Vincent did not immediately release her hand. They stood together on the floor as other couples separated around them. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Brennan." "Thank you for asking me, Mr. Bardwell. Would you like some refreshment? I could bring you some cider." She smiled. "I would like that very much." They walked to the side of the room together. Vincent brought her cider and took a cup for himself. They found seats along the wall, and Olivia discovered that talking to Vincent Bardwell was easier than she had expected. He had a quiet way of speaking but a sharp intelligence. He asked about her boarding house, about her father, about her life in Boston. She asked about his work at the ranch, about Challis, about the winters in Idaho Territory. An hour passed in what felt like minutes. The music continued, couples danced, and the Christmas celebration went on around them. But Olivia was aware only of the man beside her, of his careful words and rare smiles, of the way he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. "Would you dance with me again?" Vincent asked when another waltz began. "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. This time, their dancing was slightly better. Vincent seemed more relaxed, and Olivia felt more confident in following his lead. She noticed details about him that she had missed before. The way his hair curled slightly at his collar. The small scar on his right hand that looked like an old rope burn. The fact that his boots, while worn, were well maintained and polished. "The ranch must keep you busy," she said as they moved across the floor, "especially in winter. We have been bringing cattle down from the high pastures. It is hard work, but I enjoy it. I like being outdoors, working with the horses and cattle. It is an honest living." "Do you have family in the area?" He shook his head. "My parents are both gone. I have a sister back in Missouri, but we have not spoken in years. After I got hurt, after my face was scarred, she wrote to me once, said I should come home, that she could find me work where I would not scare children and upset respectable women. I wrote back and told her I was doing just fine where I was." Olivia heard the hurt beneath his matter-of-fact tone. "That was cruel of her. She meant well. She was trying to protect me, I suppose, but I do not need protecting. I just need to be left alone to live my life." "Everyone needs more than that," Olivia said gently. "Everyone needs connection, friendship, someone who cares whether they come home at night." Vincent looked down at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Do you have that, Miss Brennan? Someone who cares whether you come home at night?" "I have my boarders," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "They would notice eventually if I stopped cooking breakfast." "That is not the same thing." "No," she admitted. "It is not." The waltz ended. They separated reluctantly, and Olivia realized how late it had become. Many families with young children had already left. The crowd had thinned to mostly young couples and groups of men from the saloons who had wandered over for the free food. "I should be getting home," Olivia said. "I have breakfast to prepare in the morning. May I walk you?" Vincent asked immediately. "It is dark out and the streets will be icy." "I would appreciate that, thank you." They gathered their coats and said goodbyes to Mrs. Whitmore, who watched them leave together with an expression of surprise and approval. The night air hit Olivia's face like a cold slap after the warmth of the hall. Snow was still falling, and at least 3 inches had accumulated on the ground. Vincent offered his arm, and she took it gratefully. The streets were indeed treacherous with ice hidden beneath the fresh snow. They walked slowly, their breath forming clouds that mingled in the air between them. "I enjoyed this evening," Vincent said as they made their way down Main Street. "More than I expected to when I decided to attend. You sound as though you did not want to go." "I did not, initially." The foreman at the ranch, Jack Morrison, insisted that all the hands attend, said it was good for the ranch's standing in the community. Most of the other cowboys were happy to go. I was not. I do not care for crowds. Because of how people react to you, partly. And partly because I am not good at small talk and pretending to be someone I am not. Olivia smiled. "I appreciate that about you. This evening is the first time I have been to a social gathering since my father died. Mrs. Whitmore convinced me to attend, but I nearly turned around and went home 3 times on the walk over." "I am glad you did not." They reached the boarding house too soon. Olivia stopped at the front steps and turned to face Vincent. The lamplight from the window cast a warm glow across the porch. "Thank you for walking me home, Mr. Bardwell." "It was my pleasure, Miss Brennan." He hesitated, then added, "I hope I might call on you sometime, if that would be acceptable." Olivia's heart lifted. "I would like that very much. I'm home most evenings. The boarders usually retire early, and I often find myself with little to do but read or so. I could come by tomorrow evening if that is not too soon. I have the day off since I worked through last Sunday. Tomorrow would be wonderful." Vincent smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face despite the scars. "Tomorrow it is. Good night, Miss Brennan." "Good night, Mr. Bardwell and Vincent." He turned back. "You can call me Olivia." His smile widened. "Only if you call me Vince." Olivia watched him walk back down the street until he disappeared into the snowy darkness. Then she went inside, her cheeks flushed from more than just the cold. The next day passed in a blur of cooking and cleaning and tending to her boarders' needs. She had 4 rooms occupied currently. 2 traveling salesmen, a prospector who had decided to winter in town rather than at his claim, and an older gentleman who kept to himself but paid his rent on time. They ate their meals, made polite conversation, and went about their business, leaving Olivia to her thoughts. Those thoughts kept returning to Vincent Bardwell, to his careful courtesy and unexpected gentleness, to the way he had looked at her as if she were something precious, to the warmth of his hand on her waist as they danced. She found herself checking her appearance in the mirror more than usual, pinching her cheeks to bring color to them and smoothing her hair. She changed from her work dress into the blue wool from the dance, then changed back, then changed again. Finally, she settled on a simple green dress with a clean white apron, something that looked nice but not as though she had tried too hard. Vincent arrived at 6 o'clock exactly. Olivia heard his knock and forced herself to walk slowly to the door instead of running. When she opened it, she found him standing on the porch holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Good evening, Olivia. I brought you something." He held out the package with an uncertain expression. She invited him in and carefully unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small jar of honey and a cloth bag of peppermint candy sticks. "I went to the general store this morning," Vincent explained. "I remembered you said you enjoyed peppermint tea. I thought the honey and candy might be nice to have. I am sorry I could not afford anything more substantial." "This is perfect," Olivia said, genuinely touched. "I love peppermint and honey is wonderful in tea. Thank you so much." She led him to the small sitting room off the main hall. It was her private space, separated from the areas her boarders used. A fire burned in the small fireplace, and she had 2 comfortable chairs positioned near it. She offered Vincent one and took the other herself. "How was your day off?" she asked, quiet. "I slept late, which is a luxury I do not often get. Then I went into town, did some shopping and read for a while. I am reading a book about cattle breeding. It is not exciting, but it is useful for my work." "I used to love reading," Olivia said. "My mother was a teacher before she married, and she made sure I had access to books. But I have not had much time for it lately. Running the boarding house takes all my energy." "Is it difficult, managing everything on your own?" "Sometimes. The cooking and cleaning are manageable, but the finances worry me. My father was not a businessman. He kept poor records, and I am discovering debts I did not know existed. The bank has been understanding so far, but I do not know how long that will last." Vincent leaned forward, his expression serious. "If you need help with the accounts, I might be able to assist. I had to learn bookkeeping to manage my own wages and savings. It is not complicated once you understand the principles. You would do that for me. I would be happy to, if you would trust me with such personal information." Olivia considered him. She barely knew this man, yet something in her trusted him completely. Perhaps it was the honesty in his eyes, or the careful way he spoke, or simply instinct. I would appreciate that very much, she said. The books are in a terrible state. They spent the next 2 hours going through her father's records. Vincent was patient and methodical, pointing out where her father had made errors and showing her how to organize the information properly. By the time they finished, Olivia had a much clearer picture of her financial situation. It was not good, but it was not as dire as she had feared. You have enough to make it through winter if you are careful, Vincent said, but you will need to increase your occupancy in spring. 6 rooms with 4 occupied is not enough. You should advertise in Salmon City and Boise. Let people know you offer clean rooms and good food. Word of mouth will help too. Your cooking is excellent. How do you know my cooking is excellent? Olivia asked with a smile. I asked around town. Everyone says the Brennan boarding house serves the best meals in Challis. She felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. Thank you for helping me with this. I have been overwhelmed trying to manage everything alone. You do not have to be alone, Vincent said quietly. I know we have only just met, but I would like to help you, Olivia. With the accounts, with maintenance around the house, with anything you need. Why? She asked. Why would you want to do all that for someone you barely know? He looked at the fire, his scarred profile illuminated by the flames. Because yesterday at the dance, you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a monster, not someone to pity or avoid. Just a man. That is rare in my experience. And because talking to you is easy in a way that talking to most people is not. And because when you smile, I feel like maybe I am not as alone in this world as I thought I was. Olivia's breath caught. I feel the same way, she whispered. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn down. Finally, Vincent stood. I should go. It is getting late and you have breakfast to prepare in the morning. Olivia walked him to the door. Will I see you again soon? I have to work the next 4 days, but I am free on Thursday evening. May I come by then? Please do. He hesitated on the threshold, then reached out and gently touched her hand. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Vince. The days until Thursday crawled by. Olivia found herself thinking about Vincent constantly. She replayed their conversations in her mind, remembered the feel of his hand on hers, imagined what it might be like to see him every day instead of waiting days between visits. When Thursday finally arrived, she was ready long before 6 o'clock. She had made gingerbread using some of the honey he had brought, and the house smelled wonderfully of spices. When Vincent knocked, she opened the door immediately. Something smells amazing, he said, smiling. Gingerbread. I thought we could have some with tea. They settled in the sitting room again, and Olivia served the gingerbread on her mother's good plates. Vincent ate 2 pieces and praised her baking until she blushed. Tell me about the ranch, she said, wanting to know more about his life. What is a typical day like for you? I am usually up before dawn. I check on the horses first, make sure they have feed and water. Then there is whatever work needs doing that day. Mending fences, moving cattle, breaking ice on water troughs in winter. We have about 200 head at 3 rivers, so there is always something that needs attention. You work alone? Mostly, yes. There are 4 other cowboys employed at the ranch, but we usually work different sections. Jack Morrison, the foreman, coordinates everything. The ranch owner, Mr. Cunningham, lives in Boise most of the year. He trusts Jack to run things. Do you like the other cowboys? Vincent shrugged. They are good men. We are friendly but not friends, if that makes sense. They go into town together on their days off, visit the saloons and gambling halls. I prefer quieter pursuits. Like reading about cattle breeding. Olivia teased gently. He smiled. Exactly like that. I am a simple man with simple pleasures. There is nothing simple about you, Vince Bardwell. Something shifted in his expression. He set down his plate and leaned forward. Olivia, I need to be honest with you about something. Her heart jumped. What is it? I have not courted anyone since before my accident. After I was hurt, after my sister's letter made it clear what she thought of my appearance, I convinced myself that no woman would want me. I stopped trying. I made peace with the idea of being alone. He paused, his eyes intense. But then I saw you at the dance, sitting alone against the wall, and something in me refused to accept that peace anymore. When you said yes to dancing with me, when you looked at me without flinching or turning away, I felt something I thought I would never feel. Hope. Olivia reached out and took his hand. I am glad you asked me to dance, twice. I was terrified both times, he admitted. Especially the second time after you had already refused me once. I thought you would think I was being presumptuous or desperate. I think you were being brave. And I am grateful for it. I had convinced myself that I would spend my life alone too. My father needed care for so long, and then after he died, I was so focused on survival that I could not imagine anything beyond getting through each day. You have given me something to look forward to. Vincent squeezed her hand gently. I want to court you properly, Olivia. With your permission, I would like to visit you regularly, take you for walks when weather permits, and see if what we are both feeling might grow into something more. Yes, she said without hesitation. I would like that very much. They sat together holding hands until the fire burned low and the gingerbread was gone. When Vincent finally left, Olivia floated through her evening chores on a cloud of happiness. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Vincent visited every evening he had free, usually twice a week. He helped her with tasks around the boarding house, fixing a loose board on the porch, replacing a cracked window pane, chopping extra firewood. He reviewed her accounts and helped her draft an advertisement for newspapers in nearby towns. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories and hopes. Olivia discovered that Vincent had a dry sense of humor that caught her by surprise and made her laugh. She learned that he was self-educated, having read every book he could get his hands on since his mother's death. She found out that he sent half his wages to an orphanage in Missouri, where he had spent 2 years as a child after his parents temporarily could not care for him during hard times. Vincent learned that Olivia could speak some French, taught by her mother who had French heritage. He discovered her talent for sketching, seeing the careful drawings she made of plants and birds in a journal she kept. He found out about her fear of thunder, developed after lightning struck a tree near their Boston home when she was 12. Christmas came and went quietly. Olivia served a special dinner for her boarders, and Vincent joined them, helping her prepare the meal and clean up afterward. It was a modest celebration compared to what she had known in Boston, but sitting beside Vincent at the table, watching him joke with the prospector and discuss business with the salesman, felt more like home than anything had in years. January brought brutal cold and heavy snow. The boarding house was warm enough, but Olivia worried about Vincent working outside in such harsh conditions. He assured her he was used to it and knew how to stay safe, but she still found herself watching the window on his visiting nights, relief flooding her when she saw him approaching through the snow. One evening in late January, Vincent arrived with news. Mr. Cunningham is coming to inspect the ranch next week. Jack wants everything in perfect order. I will have to work through the weekend, so I will not be able to visit until Wednesday at the earliest. Olivia tried to hide her disappointment. She had grown so accustomed to his visits that the house felt empty without him. I understand. Your work is important. I will miss seeing you, Vincent said, taking her hand. These evenings with you have become the best part of my days. Mine too, she admitted. He hesitated, then reached up and gently touched her cheek. Olivia, I think I am falling in love with you, her heart soared. I think I am falling in love with you too." Vincent pulled her close, and she went willingly into his arms. He held her carefully, as if she were something precious that might break. She wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart through his shirt. "I am not good with romantic words," he murmured into her hair. "But I want you to know that you have changed my life. Before I met you, I was just going through motions, existing but not really living. You have given me a reason to hope again, to want more than just getting through each day." "You have done the same for me," Olivia said, lifting her head to look at him. "I was so lost after my father died. I did not know how I would manage or what my future held. You have made me feel less alone." Vincent cupped her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs brushing her cheeks. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," she breathed. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But Olivia had never been more certain of anything. When his lips met hers, gentle and questioning, she felt something click into place, as if she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. The kiss was sweet and careful, both of them tentative with inexperience. When they finally separated, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I have never kissed anyone before," he admitted. "Neither have I," she said, smiling. "I think we did rather well for beginners." He laughed, a sound she rarely heard from him but treasured when she did. "Perhaps we should practice more just to be sure." "Perhaps we should," she agreed. They kissed again, longer this time with more confidence. Olivia felt warmth spread through her entire body, chasing away the winter chill. In Vincent's arms, she felt safe and cherished and alive. The days without seeing Vincent dragged endlessly. Olivia threw herself into her work, but nothing could distract her from missing him. She found herself touching her lips, remembering their kisses and blushing at her own thoughts. On Tuesday, a week after their last meeting, a knock came at the door during breakfast service. Olivia was carrying plates to the dining room and called for whoever it was to wait a moment. When she finally opened the door, she found a young man she did not recognize. "Miss Brennan." "I am Tommy Carter from the Three Rivers Ranch. I have a message from Vince Bardwell." Her heart jumped. "Is he all right?" "He is fine, miss. But Mr. Cunningham extended his visit, and all the hands have to work extra hours. Vince asked me to let you know he might not be able to visit until this weekend. He apologizes and says he will come as soon as he can." Olivia tried not to let her disappointment show. "Thank you for bringing the message. Please tell him I understand and will see him when he is able to come." Tommy tipped his hat and left. Olivia closed the door and leaned against it, feeling foolish for how much Vincent's absence affected her. They had only known each other 2 months. She should not be this dependent on seeing him. But the heart wanted what it wanted, and her heart wanted Vincent Bardwell. Wednesday came and went with no word. Thursday and Friday passed the same way. By Saturday, Olivia was worried. What if something had happened? What if he had changed his mind about her? What if the ranch owner had decided to let him go? Saturday evening, long after dark, a heavy knock sounded on the door. Olivia rushed to answer it and found Vincent standing on the porch, snow covering his hat and coat. He looked exhausted. "I am so sorry," he said immediately. "Cunningham kept finding more things that needed doing. I could not get away. I came as soon as I could." Olivia pulled him inside. "You are freezing. Come sit by the fire." She helped him remove his coat and hat, then led him to the sitting room. He collapsed into the chair with a heavy sigh while she stirred up the fire and poured him hot coffee from the pot she kept on the stove. "Have you eaten?" she asked. "Not since this morning." She brought him bread and cold meat and cheese from the kitchen. He ate gratefully while she sat beside him, just happy to have him there. "I missed you," he said when he finished eating. Every night I wanted to saddle a horse and ride into town just to see you, even if only for a few minutes. I missed you too." I was starting to worry that something had happened. I should have sent another message. "I am sorry for making you worry." He reached for her hand. "Olivia, this week made me realize something. I do not want to keep living my life in pieces, seeing you for a few hours twice a week and then going back to the ranch alone. I want more than that." Her pulse quickened. "What are you saying?" Vincent slid from his chair onto one knee before her, still holding her hand. "I am saying that I love you. I know we have not known each other long, but I am certain of my feelings. You are the most wonderful person I have ever met, and I cannot imagine my future without you in it. Olivia Brennan, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Vincent stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally separated, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "I do not have a ring yet," Vincent said. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you would say yes before I spent money on something you might not want." "I do not need a ring right now," Olivia assured him. "I just need you." They spent the next hour making plans. Vincent would speak to Jack Morrison about finding a house in town so he could live closer to his work while still being near Olivia. They would marry in the spring, giving them time to prepare and save money. Olivia would continue running the boarding house, and Vincent would help her when he was not working at the ranch. "I wish we could marry sooner," Vincent said, holding her close. "But I want to do this right. I want to be able to provide for you properly." "Spring is only a few months away," Olivia said. "We can wait." But waiting proved harder than either of them anticipated. February brought more snow and bitter cold. Vincent's visits became more precious but also more frustrating. Every time he had to leave, Olivia felt as though a piece of her heart went with him. In early March, disaster struck. One of Olivia's boarders, one of the traveling salesmen, became seriously ill with pneumonia. Olivia nursed him as best she could, but within a week, he had died despite her efforts. The doctor came to examine the other residents and declared that the boarding house needed to be quarantined for 10 days to ensure the illness did not spread further. Vincent arrived for his usual visit to find a notice on the door from the doctor. When Olivia came to the window, he could see the exhaustion in her face. "Are you all right?" he called through the glass. "I am fine, just tired. They will not let anyone in or out for 10 days. "I am so sorry, Vince. Do not apologize, I will wait. Do you have enough supplies?" "Yes, the doctor arranged for deliveries to be left on the porch, but I hate that we cannot see each other. It is only 10 days. We have waited this long. We can manage a bit longer." But Vincent chafed at the separation. He rode into town every evening and stood outside the boarding house, talking to Olivia through the window until late at night. He brought his guitar one evening and played for her, sitting on the porch while she listened from inside. The music echoed through the cold air, love songs and ballads that made her cry. The quarantine finally ended, and the day it was lifted, Vincent was waiting on the porch when Olivia opened the door. He swept her into his arms and kissed her right there in the doorway, not caring who might see. "I am never being separated from you like that again," he said firmly. "We are getting married as soon as possible." "But we wanted to wait until spring, until you had saved more money," Olivia protested weakly. "I do not care about money. I do not care about having everything perfect. I care about making you my wife and starting our life together." He cupped her face in his hands. "Marry me next week, Olivia. We will figure out the rest as we go." She smiled through tears. "Next week?" "Yes." They were married the following Saturday in the small church in Challis. Mrs. Whitmore stood up as Olivia's witness, and Jack Morrison stood for Vincent. The ceremony was simple and brief, But when the preacher declared them husband and wife and Vincent kissed her, Olivia felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. The boarding house became their home. Vincent moved into Olivia's room, and they began their married life surrounded by boarders and daily chores. It was not romantic in the traditional sense, but it was theirs. Vincent continued working at the ranch but arranged with Jack to work shorter days so he could help Olivia more with the boarding house. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, cooking together, managing the accounts together, greeting new boarders together. Spring brought warmer weather and an increase in business. Olivia's advertisements in other towns began paying off, and soon all 6 rooms were occupied regularly. With Vincent's help with maintenance and Olivia's excellent cooking, the boarding house developed a reputation as the best accommodation in Challis. One evening in May, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Vincent pulled Olivia into his lap. "I have been thinking," he said, wrapping his arms around her waist. "We should expand. There is that empty lot next door. We could buy it and build an addition, maybe add 4 more rooms. With the business we are doing now, we could easily fill them." "That would cost a lot of money," Olivia said, though the idea excited her. "I have been talking to Jack about it. He knows some men who do construction work in the off-season, and I have been saving for years with no real purpose for the money. This would be a good investment in our future. You would use your savings to expand the boarding house. It is not just your boarding house anymore, it is ours. Your future is my future now." Olivia turned in his lap to kiss him. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he murmured against her lips. By late summer, the addition was complete. 4 new rooms, each slightly larger than the original ones, extended from the back of the house. They filled immediately, and Olivia had to turn away potential boarders for lack of space. The business success brought financial security they had not known before. Vincent was able to reduce his hours at the ranch even further, eventually leaving altogether to focus solely on managing the boarding house with Olivia. Jack Morrison was sorry to see him go but understood, and they remained friends. In October, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent over dinner, nervous about how he would react. His face lit up like the sun, and he lifted her out of her chair and spun her around the room. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying in wonder. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, laughing at his joy. "Happy does not begin to describe it. I never thought I would have this. A wife, a home, a family. I thought I would spend my life alone. And now I have everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know to dream about." The winter was gentler than the one before. Olivia's pregnancy progressed well, though she tired easily toward the end. Vincent took over more of the heavy work, insisting she rest whenever possible. Their boarders, having become like extended family over the months, were excited about the baby and often brought small gifts for the coming child. In March, on a snowy afternoon 1 year after their wedding, Olivia went into labor. Vincent rode for the doctor while Mrs. Whitmore stayed with Olivia, coaching her through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting into the night, but when dawn broke, they had a healthy son. Vincent held his boy with shaking hands, tears streaming down his scarred face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Olivia asked tiredly from the bed. "Samuel," Vincent said without hesitation. "After your father, if that is acceptable to you." "Samuel Bardwell," Olivia said, testing the name. "It is perfect." Little Samuel grew quickly, a happy baby with his mother's dark hair and his father's blue eyes. The boarding house became a lively place with a child's laughter echoing through it. The boarders doted on Samuel, and Mrs. Whitmore visited frequently, bringing baby clothes she had sewn herself. 2 years later, a daughter joined their family. They named her Rose, and she had Vincent's quiet nature and Olivia's determination. Vincent was an attentive father to both children, playing with them for hours and telling them stories before bed. Watching him with their children, Olivia often thought back to that Christmas dance where she had sat alone, never imagining that the scarred cowboy in the corner would become the center of her entire world. The boarding house continued to thrive. They eventually bought the building outright, free and clear of debt. Vincent proved to have a talent for business, and under his management, they became one of the most successful boarding houses in all of Idaho Territory. When Samuel was 5 and Rose was 3, Vincent surprised Olivia with a gift. He had been working on something in secret for months, and one evening he led her outside to the small garden behind the boarding house. There stood a gazebo, beautifully constructed from local pine. Inside, a bench big enough for 2 people curved along one wall. Lanterns hung from the rafters, creating a warm glow in the twilight. "I wanted to give you a place where we could sit together on summer evenings," Vincent explained. "Away from the noise of the boarding house, where it could be just us like it was in the beginning." Olivia walked into the gazebo, running her hands over the smooth wood. "It is beautiful, Vince. When did you have time to build this?" "I've been working on it early in the mornings before you and the children wake up. Jack helped with some of the harder parts." She pulled him close and kissed him. "Thank you, I love it." They made a habit of sitting in the gazebo after the children were in bed, talking about their day and making plans for the future. It became their special place, a sanctuary where they could reconnect away from the demands of running a boarding house and raising children. Years passed peacefully. Samuel grew into a serious boy who loved books like his father. Rose was more outgoing, making friends easily and charming everyone she met. 2 more children followed, a daughter named Lily when Rose was 4, and another son they called Thomas, born 3 years after that. The boarding house expanded again to meet demand, eventually taking over the building next door when it came up for sale. What had started as a struggling 6-room establishment became a 20-room hotel, with Vincent and Olivia managing a small staff of workers to help with the increased workload. Vincent never forgot where he had come from or what his life had been before Olivia. He made a point of hiring men who had trouble finding work elsewhere, men with scars or disabilities or troubled pasts who just needed someone to give them a chance. The hotel staff were fiercely loyal to him, and the business benefited from their dedication. One December evening, 20 years after that first Christmas dance, Vincent and Olivia attended another holiday celebration at the church social hall. Their children were all grown or nearly so. Samuel was at university in the East, studying law. Rose had married a local rancher and had given them 2 grandchildren. Lily was 18 and being courted by a young doctor. Thomas, at 15, was still at home but already showing signs of following his father into hotel management. The social hall looked much as it had 2 decades earlier, decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons. A fiddler played while couples danced. Vincent and Olivia stood near the refreshment table, watching the festivities. "You remember the first time we were here together?" Olivia asked, slipping her hand into Vincent's. "Every detail," he said. "You sat against that wall right over there. You wore a blue dress and your hair was pulled back. You looked so alone." "I was alone, and then you asked me to dance." "Twice," he reminded her with a smile. "You refused me the first time." "I did. I have regretted those wasted minutes ever since." Vincent turned to face her fully. Silver threaded through his dark hair now, and lines marked the corners of his eyes. The scars on his face had faded over the years but were still visible. To Olivia, he was more handsome now than he had been at 28. "Dance with me now," he asked, extending his hand just as he had all those years ago. "Always," she answered, taking his hand. They moved onto the floor and began to waltz. They were much better dancers now, after years of practice. But what made the dance special was not their improved technique. It was the knowledge of everything they had built together, every challenge they had overcome, every joy they had shared. As they turned around the floor, Olivia caught sight of a young woman sitting alone against the wall. She looked lost and uncertain, much as Olivia had been so long ago. And in the corner, keeping to himself, stood a young man with burned scars covering one side of his neck and jaw. He was watching the dancers with longing but made no move to join them. "Vince," Olivia said quietly. "Do you see that young man in the corner?" Vincent followed her gaze. "I do. Those look like bad burns." "They do. And that woman over there looks very much like I did 20 years ago." Vincent smiled slowly. "Are you thinking what I am thinking?" "I believe I am." When the waltz ended, they walked over to the young man. Up close, Olivia could see he was probably 20 or so, with kind eyes and the rough clothes of a ranch hand. "Excuse me," Vincent said. "I am Vincent Bardwell, and this is my wife Olivia. We run the Grand Hotel here in town." The young man's eyes widened slightly. "I know who you are, sir. Everyone in the territory knows about your hotel. I am Peter Whitfield. I work at the Morrison Ranch." "Jack Morrison is an old friend of mine," Vincent said warmly. "He runs a good operation. Tell me, Peter, have you danced yet this evening?" Peter looked down at his feet. "No, sir, I am not much for dancing." "That is what I used to say too," Vincent said. "But I learned something important many years ago. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask someone to dance, even when you are certain they will refuse you." He glanced toward the young woman sitting alone. Peter followed his gaze, and something flickered in his expression. Hope, perhaps, or longing. "I do not think a woman like that would want to dance with someone like me," Peter said quietly. "You might be surprised," Olivia said gently. 20 years ago, I sat in almost exactly that same spot, and a cowboy with scars on his face asked me to dance. I almost said no. If I had, I would have missed out on the greatest blessing of my life." Peter looked between them, clearly understanding what they were saying. "You think I should ask her?" "I think you should," Vincent said. "And if she says no the first time, I think you should ask her again. Because sometimes people are afraid to say yes to what they want most." They left Peter there and returned to the refreshment table. A few minutes later, they saw him approach the young woman. They were too far away to hear the conversation, but they saw her shake her head. They saw Peter's shoulders slump. And then they saw him gather himself and ask again. This time, the young woman smiled and took his hand. As the couple moved onto the dance floor, awkward and uncertain but smiling at each other, Olivia leaned against her husband's shoulder. "We did a good thing tonight," she said. "We did what someone did for us once," Vincent replied. "We gave hope a chance." They stayed at the dance for another hour, then walked home through the snowy streets of Challis hand in hand, just as they had done 20 years before. The hotel was quiet when they arrived, their staff having everything well in hand. In their private quarters, a warm fire waited. Vincent and Olivia settled into their favorite chairs, comfortable in the silence that came from years of companionship. "Are you happy?" Vincent asked, a question he still posed sometimes even after all their years together. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Olivia answered honestly. "You have given me everything I could want. A home, a family, security, and most importantly, love." "You gave me those things first," Vincent said. "That night at the dance, when you agreed to waltz with me, you gave me back my humanity. You made me believe I was worthy of love and happiness. Everything good in my life stems from that one moment." "Then we saved each other," Olivia said. Because I was drowning before you asked me to dance. Twice, Vincent reminded her with a smile. Twice, she agreed, laughing. Later, lying in bed with Vincent's arm around her, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From loneliness to love, from struggle to success, from isolation to family. It had not always been easy. There had been hard years, difficult decisions, moments when they did not know if they would succeed. But they had faced everything together, and that had made all the difference. She thought about the young couple at the dance, Peter and the woman whose name they did not know. She hoped they would find what she and Vincent had found. She hoped that 20 years from now, they would look back on this night as the moment their lives truly began. What are you thinking about? Vincent murmured sleepily. How grateful I am that you were brave enough to ask a lonely woman to dance. How blessed I am that you asked twice. I would have asked 100 times if that was what it took, Vincent said. You were worth any amount of rejection or embarrassment. I love you, Vince Bardwell. I love you too, Olivia Bardwell. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the snow falling softly outside their window, the hotel quiet around them, and their hearts full of gratitude for the chance meeting that had changed both their lives forever. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear. Their children and grandchildren came for breakfast, filling the private dining room with noise and laughter. Samuel had made the journey from university to surprise them. Rose arrived with her husband and children. Lily came with her young doctor, newly engaged and glowing with happiness. Thomas helped serve the meal, already showing the hospitality skills that would serve him well in the hotel business. After breakfast, they exchanged simple gifts. Vincent gave Olivia a beautiful shawl he had ordered from San Francisco. She gave him a new watch to replace the one that had finally stopped working after 20 years of faithful service. The children gave their parents small tokens of affection, and the grandchildren performed a song they had learned for the occasion. Later, when the family gathering had dispersed, and it was just Vincent and Olivia again in their sitting room, they held hands and watched the fire. "This is what I always wanted," Olivia said quietly, "even when I did not know it was possible. A family, a home, someone to grow old with." "You gave me all of that." "We gave it to each other," Vincent corrected. "Neither of us could have built this life alone. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not gone to that dance, if you had not asked me to dance, sometimes, and it terrifies me. I would have spent the rest of my life alone, convinced that I was not worthy of love. I would have worked until I was too old to work anymore, and then I would have died alone and unmourned. Instead, I have had 20 years of happiness beyond my wildest dreams. I have a wife who loves me, children who make me proud, grandchildren who bring joy to my days, and a legacy that will continue after I am gone. All because I found the courage to ask one woman to dance. Twice, Olivia said, smiling through tears. Twice, he agreed. The years continued to pass peacefully. The hotel remained successful, eventually being passed down to Thomas, who ran it with the same care and attention his parents had. Samuel became a successful lawyer and moved back to Idaho with his wife and children. Rose's ranch prospered, and her children grew up strong and healthy. Lily and her doctor husband opened a practice in Challis and became beloved members of the community. Vincent and Olivia aged gracefully together, their love deepening with each passing year. They remained active in the hotel business well into their 60s, though they left more and more of the daily operations to Thomas and his capable staff. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren organized a celebration at the hotel. The entire town was invited, and nearly everyone came. The social hall was decorated much as it had been for that fateful Christmas dance so long ago. When it came time for speeches, Vincent stood and asked for quiet. He pulled Olivia to her feet beside him and addressed the crowd. 40 years ago, I was a lonely cowboy with a scarred face and no hope for the future. I went to a Christmas dance expecting nothing but another evening of isolation and pity. Instead, I met the most remarkable woman I have ever known. She saw past my scars to the man beneath. She gave me a chance when I did not deserve one. She loved me when I thought I was unlovable. Every good thing in my life has come from her. Olivia Bardwell, you are my heart, my home, and my greatest blessing. I thank God every day that I was brave enough to ask you to dance. The crowd applauded, many wiping away tears. Olivia stood on her toes to kiss her husband, not caring that everyone was watching. And I thank God you asked twice, she whispered against his lips. They danced that night as they had 40 years before, older now but no less in love. Their children and grandchildren danced around them. The town that had watched their love story unfold celebrated with them. When the evening ended and they walked home through streets they had walked together countless times, Vincent pulled Olivia close. If I could go back and live my life over, I would not change a single thing, he said. Every hardship, every struggle, every moment of pain was worth it because it led me to you. Even the mountain lion, Olivia asked, touching the scars on his face tenderly. Even that. Because those scars brought me low enough that I had to find courage I did not know I possessed. They made me humble enough to appreciate what I had when I finally found it. They made me the man you fell in love with. I fell in love with your courage, your kindness, and your gentle heart, Olivia said. The scars were just part of you, not what defined you. You taught me that. Before you, I thought the scars were all anyone would ever see. You taught me that I was more than my appearance, more than my past, more than my fears. They reached their home, the hotel that had been built on the foundation of a struggling boarding house and the love of two lonely people. Lights glowed in windows where guests slept peacefully. The night clerk nodded respectfully as they passed through the lobby to their private quarters. In their room, they prepared for bed with the comfortable ease of long partnership. When they finally settled under the covers, Olivia curled against Vincent's side as she had done for 40 years. I love you, she said, as she did every night. I love you too, he replied, as he always did. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a life beyond their wildest dreams. Vincent and Olivia lived many more years together, watching their family grow and their legacy expand. They saw great-grandchildren born. They celebrated their 50th anniversary surrounded by 3 generations of descendants. They grew old together with grace and dignity and unwavering love. When Vincent finally passed at the age of 85, with Olivia holding his hand, his last words were of gratitude for the woman who had changed his life with one simple yes at a Christmas dance so long ago. Olivia followed him 3 years later, dying peacefully in her sleep at 83. She was buried beside her husband in the Challis cemetery, under a shared headstone that read simply, Vincent and Olivia Bardwell. 2 hearts, 1 love forever. Their hotel continued for generations, run by their descendants who never forgot the love story that had made it all possible. The story of the scarred cowboy who asked twice and the lonely woman who said yes became legend in Challis, told and retold to remind people that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest courage is asking someone to dance. And every Christmas, when the town gathered for their annual dance, someone would inevitably tell the story of Vincent and Olivia, and young people would be encouraged to be brave, to ask twice if necessary, to give love a chance even when fear said it was impossible. Because sometimes, the most beautiful love stories begin with a simple question asked twice and answered with hope.